Tonight, there are fears of an even wider conflict in Syria. Military action over the weekend threatens to draw a key U.S. ally into the civil war. Seth Doan is following this.
This cockpit video from an Israeli helicopter shows a possible new front in Syria's war. Israel shot down this drone when it crossed the Israeli border. Israel accuses Iran of using a base inside Syria to launch the drone.
Ah, the old drone over chosen airspace story. Why didn't the skies darken? Sorry, I've come late to the party. I was having problems with a rabbi in the machine. Anyway, I accept I don't own my laptops, but I do own the ability to tweak them with operating system imaging software for a rapid reinstall. Anyway, let's talk about drones. Drones in the sky over occupied Palestine, drones in the White House, drones in Florida school shootings, drone Russian-Israeli intelligence groups that pose as extremist religious cults who hang with powerful people, drone propaganda outlets sighted over Texas, and drone countries that appear fully autonomous, but we wonder sometimes. And they run little drones who also appear autonomous. And we also wonder sometimes. Getting back to the special skies of Israel, we can see this incredible footage shows a drone, apparently, at low level, moving fast, invading sacred chosen airspace. Why didn't the skies darken? We all know the various narratives being pushed are true, of course. After all, we all saw it on the telly, or YouTube video, or website, so it's all 100% kosher. Interestingly, maybe I was wrong about Israeli high-tech. Someone get that Apache helicopter gunner a Samsung S7 Edge smartphone so we can get some decent footage with a software zoom. That's a bad drone selfie. Trust me, the drones are not just over Israel, apparently. They are worldwide and especially all over the internet in the form of the so-called alt media, Israeli and Russian Jewish McDonald's news invective, masquerading as an organic grassroots alternative to the mainstream media. While a seeming breakout of infantile exuberance has emerged with the downing of an Israeli jet over Israeli territory, no one is talking much about the massive retaliatory airstrikes Netanyahu justified after the horrific Iranian drone incursion.
Iran also denies that it committed an act of aggression against Israel last week, that it sent a drone into our airspace to threaten our people. Well, here's a piece of that Iranian drone, or what's left of it after we shot it down. I brought it here so you can see it for yourself. Mr. Zarif, do you recognize this? You should. It's yours. You can take back with you a message to the tyrants of Tehran. Do not test Israel's resolve.
Narrative follows. Iranian super-duper drone overflies Israeli territory, brazenly, showing the audacity and improved technology of said evil Iranians. They haven't just got AK-47s, a meth habit and a bad attitude. They have super secret weapons straight out of the Captain America vs. Hydra weapon stash. What's more, they are building bases from which to attack the Israeli ghetto/crime bunker and put man, woman, infant and suckling to the sword, leaving alive nothing that breatheth. I beg to differ. Seeing as Israel has a stolen multi-trillion-dollar military high-technology industry and the backing of its proxy state, the United States, who also possesses a multi-trillion-dollar military high-technology industry, I'm not so convinced the downing, apparently, of an Israeli jet over Israeli territory is anything to celebrate. In the case of defeating Israeli supremacism and hegemony in the region, the greatest weapon to be used against Netanyahu and the gang is not a bearded man threatening to rain down 80,000 missiles on Israel and its ammonia tank farm and critical infrastructure. Bibi dreams of such a scenario. He's not scared. He can't wait. The creature that puts a fear of the living God into Bibi is one so dangerous, he had to invent a puppet drone, apparently hard-right president of the United States, to counter it and its nationwide effects. This creature sends chills down Bibi's spine at the thought of coming face to face with one at a Norman Finkelstein talk. Here is that Bibi killing beast. Brace yourself.
Hi. During your speech, you made a lot of references to Jewish people as well as certain people in your audience, not Jewish people in general, but certain people, especially in your audience, to Nazis. Now, that is extremely offensive when certain people are German, and they're also extremely offensive to people who've actually suffered under Nazi rule.
Yes, the left-wing, whining snowflake Jew, replete with Trotsky Cafe radical intellectual glasses, so you know she's 100% committed to the revolution. I bet she has a French deconstructionist Marxist critique of the dialectic in her trusty backpack with Apple iPad. You know she has, comrades, and it's not on the Apple iStore, she has it in a well-thumbed-through hard copy. She's not messing about. The video supposes this young lady is a Zionist. She was in fact merely reproaching Finkelstein for using the term Nazi to describe Israel. She said it was offensive to Germans as well as Jews in the audience. She is what Bibi fears more than Hezbollah and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Bibi fears them so much. He and his old Special Forces buddies and US-based Israeli intelligence front-end corporate lackeys, like drug money launderer, Israeli firster Sheldon Adelson, had to build a high-tech Israeli drone all their own and put it on full remote in the White House. Rex Tillerson makes sure the batteries are fully charged at all times. And despite all the rhetoric, no one shot down the Trump drone yet. And like the Iranian drone over Israel, we wonder if anyone is really trying hard enough to get the job done, because I swear I played that Israeli drone control truck attack on Call of Duty a few years back.
Multiple confirmed kills. Nice work.
Look, here. Netanyahu sums up the emerging Israeli psych warfare-produced narrative.
This morning, Iran brazenly violated Israel's sovereignty. They dispatched an Iranian drone from Syrian territory into Israel, and this demonstrates that our warnings were 100% correct. Israel holds Iran and its Syrian host responsible for today's aggression. We will continue to do whatever is necessary to protect our sovereignty and our security.
With the Talpiot program now well known to the main players around the world, Bibi is safe to pursue the goal of Greater Israel. Well, mostly safe. He may well have pinched his secretary's bottom, wait for that one next, overfilling his Diet Coke glass at kosher McDonald's. They say there's more to come. I doubt it, but it is possible. Everyone now knows Israel has them kill switched thanks to Edward Snowden, and their critical infrastructure is in the safe, sure hands of Bibi and his friends under the Talpiot program.
NSA wanted to impress the Japanese, show them our reach. They loved the live drone feeds.
This is over Pakistan right now.
They were not as thrilled to learn that we wanted them to help us spy on the Japanese population. They said it was against their laws. Of course, we tapped the entire country anyway. And we didn't stop there, because once we owned their communication system, we started going after their physical infrastructure. We'd slip these little sleeper programs into power grids, dams, hospitals, and the idea was if the day came when Japan was no longer an ally, it'd be lights out. And it wasn't just the Japanese. We were planning malware in Mexico, Germany, Brazil, Austria. I mean, China, I can understand, or Russia, or Iran, or Venezuela, okay, but Austria? You're also being ordered to follow most world leaders and heads of industry. You know, you're tracking trade deals, sex scandals, diplomatic cables to give the U.S. an advantage in negotiations at the G8, or leverage over Brazilian oil companies, or helping to oust some third world leader who's not playing ball. And ultimately, the truth sinks in that no matter what justification you're selling yourself, this is not about terrorism. Terrorism is the excuse. This is about economic and social control. And the only thing you're really protecting is the supremacy of your government.
The Smart Cities program is being totally run by Israel and is the new cornerstone of their control mechanism.
The Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, heir to the throne, looks like one of those Gorbachev types that come along from time to time, an insider who thinks the regime in which he operates is wholly dysfunctional and needs to be reformed. One concrete ambition is investment of $500 billion in a new futuristic city on the Red Sea coast called Neom.
A place where pioneers and thinkers and doers can exchange ideas and get things done.
The promotional video shows just how different they intend it to be from the stultifying, repressed images we normally see from Saudi.
Stunning nature, mountains, plains, valleys, coasts, coral reefs, islands. Mountains are covered with snow in winter, mild weather in summer, 10 degrees less than the other Gulf cities and capitals. The political will is strong, the popular will and desire is strong. All the elements of success exist to create something great within the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
That's the Crown Prince bin Salman. He's only 32 and he's the recently appointed heir to the Saudi throne, replacing his cousin in the role. He's already impressed President Trump.
With energy that flows from the sun and wind.
One objective is economic, preparing the country for when the world weans itself off oil. It also needs jobs to occupy its youthful population. More than 2/3 of the population is under 30. But another objective is cultural. The country has become a beacon of ultra-conservative Sunni thinking. The Crown Prince made an astonishing admission to The Guardian this week. What happened in the region in the last 30 years is not the Middle East. After the Iranian Revolution in 1979, people wanted to copy this model in different countries. One of them is Saudi Arabia. We didn't know how to deal with it, and the problem spread all over the world. Now is the time to get rid of it.
You remember those compact cities Alex Jones warned us about 15 years ago when he was slightly relevant and slightly objective? Everything is linked, from self-driving cars to power grids to water and food supplies. It's all being run from Israel, and every single country is signing on to it. Every country, no exceptions. It's a world takeover, possibly the final phase, the beast system. Someone tell Alex his best friend Bibi is running the show. Any nasty words to Bibi are for show to keep the alt media sheep placated. He won't be walking anytime soon, and besides, have you looked at his successor? He is way worse. The chances of Bibi being indicted for dipping his fingers into the corporate spare change box are pretty much nil, but you never know. Seeing as he has the goods on every world leader on the planet, I'm sure he's not calling the removalists quite yet. But again, it'll keep the sheep happy and the alt media drones bleating on about Israel's imminent demise. As the walls close in around Bibi, maybe Hassan Nasrallah and Hezbollah will repeat the demands for non-Palestinian Jews to pack up and leave, or leave in a coffin. That will make Israeli citizens get rid of Bibi and negotiate meaningfully with the Palestinians. Not. Julian Assange's great idea called WikiLeaks has now become a simple Dropbox for Israeli intelligence operating out of the US State Department in Washington, D.C. and Tel Aviv. WikiLeaks' sole job is to release the emails Israel has gathered on the enemies of their drone Trump. That's all it exists for now. It was a great idea at first. Israel lives off and controls its diverse population with the threat of annihilation by outside forces, whether it be a Holocaust narrative or the rhetoric of Hezbollah or Iran building bases in Syria or a deadly Iranian high-tech drone. Israel is always holding on by a thin thread. Death and destruction just around the corner. They are the masters at this, and they have drawn in Iran all the way to their border. Iran must also have a high-tech army too, with lots of high-tech weapons. The Jewish state versus the Islamic state. You know this one is a setup.
How far are we? One's right there. You're gonna pass in front of us. Whoa, right in front of us. Same altitude. All right. Whoa, we got stopped. Felt that one. We got stopped. 0713.
So what's with the allegation of new Iran tech? What's with this drone story? How did Iran supposedly get a high-tech drone? Like most of their tech, it's given to them by Russia and also China, but some of the latest is given to them by the United States. Here's how. On the 4th of December 2011, an American Lockheed Martin RQ-170 Sentinel unmanned aerial vehicle was captured by Iranian forces near the city of Kashmir in northeastern Iran. The Iranian government announced that the UAV was brought down by its cyber warfare unit, which commandeered the aircraft and safely landed it. Initial reports from Western news sources disputed this claim and claimed that it had actually been shot down. The United States government initially denied the claims at all, but later President Obama acknowledged that the aircraft downed was a US drone and requested that Iran return it. The drone appeared to be largely intact except for possible minor damage on its left wing. Dan Gurr, an analyst at the Lexington Institute, stated the largely intact airframe ruled out the possibility of an engine or navigational malfunction. Quote, either this was a cyber electronic warfare attack system that brought the UAV down, or it was a glitch in the command and control system. End quote. Whatever the exact details, Iran got a hold of one of the United States' most advanced stealth drones. Oh dear. Why haven't the skies darkened? I bet Lockheed was severely punished and hauled over the coals for the loss of their most advanced drone. Well, according to industry insider Mudge, in fact, they will undoubtedly be rewarded for losing a piece of ultra-secret high technology with another contract to beat the tech they just, quote-unquote, lost to Iran. You see, this is the game, arming your enemies, puffing them up, and leading them down the garden path just before you blow them to kingdom come. Please consult Professor Anthony Sutton and his extensive works on Wall Street and the rise of Hitler, and his massive volumes dealing with the arming of the Soviet Union and supplying the latest technology to them, including whole factories. Let Mudge or Peter Zatko give us a little lowdown on what he has found in dealing with US defense contractors and their lax attitude to security. He has some theories about their attitude and why they continue to ignore cybersecurity issues raised by their sysadmins. This is a 2013 DEF CON lecture, 5 years ago. DEF CON is a yearly get-together of generally white-hat hackers, a lot of whom work for government agencies like DARPA and large corporations. Just for giggles, here's Mudge as well from 1998, appearing before a US Senate hearing committee on internet security. Nice haircut. The title of the talk is Unexpected Stories from a Hacker Inside the Government, a 5-minute extract. Mudge is going to strongly infer that US defense contractors are deliberately lowering their security to allow countries like Israel, Iran, Russia and China to garner defense secrets, and then that same US defense contractor goes begging for another contract from the US Congress to counter the technology they just quote-unquote lost. 5 minutes. This is actually explosive detail that should be front-page news considering Peter Zatko's standing in the cybersecurity world.
So this talk is called Game Theory's a Bitch. I was having dinner with, a lot of these stories are because I'm outside having dinner somewhere. I don't cook. I was having dinner with an old friend, and his company goes in and cleans up APT after, big well-known names get compromised, in particular whether they're government contractors or commercial organizations. And he posed a really interesting hypotheticals because we were just shooting the crap back and forth. And he said, hey, what do you think about the following chain of events? First, RSA gets compromised. Networks defended by their tools are vulnerable, and as a result, a defense contractor gets compromised. Said defense contractor, if you look up on Wikipedia, is the one who made this really cool stealth drone. Later, a really cool stealth drone goes missing over in a, Middle Eastern state. Like, what do you think about that chain of events? I'm like, that's terrifying. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, no, for an entirely different reason. Look at it this way, I have no clue. That's a hypothetical, and there were a whole bunch of rumors about what had happened. But let's assume that you, as a country or a large organization, that your advantage is technology. You can field the fastest and the best technology, so you're ahead of everybody. That's your advantage. Newest, most advanced toys. Someone else steals some of your tech. What do you have to do? You got to replace it with newer tech, right? You got to keep your advantage. So suppose a government contractor gets some of their super tech toll, and what does their government customer actually need to do? Well, the government in that case, and this is all a game theory hypothetical, need to pay someone to make the next version so that the people who just stole it don't achieve parity, so that they're not even. They could go to some other government contractor because, of course, the one in question just lost everything, but they actually most likely won't. And here's probably why. The initial contract for very expensive research efforts can take a long time to put in place. You're talking over a year, sometimes longer than, sometimes you measure it in years rather than months. That was part of the coolness of CFT, is that we were measuring that in days. Imagine if you're under something, sequestration is what we're under now, it can take even longer. So if a government agency wanted to start a new program to replace tech, so that's essentially starting the same program to do the same thing that you were already paying somebody to do, A, it's tough to get permission to do that, because you got to go justify taxpayer money. I'm like, we just gave you the money to do that. And B, when you spin it back up, you're going to have to redo a lot of work. You're going to have to redo the contracting that you already had in place. You're going to have to spin people up to speed on management side. You're going to have to respin up the tech side, and you've spent years putting that in place. So why wouldn't you just go back to the people that you already have a relationship with, already have a contract with? They already know what they lost, or maybe you know what they lost and stuff, and you can tell them because they're your customer. So you just pay them to give you the next thing. Remember, they're not financially incentivized to go fix how they were actually compromised in the first place or clean it up. Because staying with a really familiar solution or situation is comfortable, which makes us a trap that a government funding source can actually be particularly susceptible to. And you can view this on a case-by-case basis, and kind of staying with the same contractor could even make sense. But if you step back and listen to what's been talked about in the media, you may see something that's a larger picture that seems like an endless list of technologies and IP being stolen. And each time it happens, that company is in a situation where A, there's really no penalties or reprimands for it. And on the contrary, they're actually rewarded with more funding. So because their customer needs to make the next text to replace the stuff that just got stolen, to replace the stuff that just got stolen, to replace the stuff that just got stolen. So yeah, game theory is a bitch, because if you look at it this angle, and part of the neat thing about game theory is you can fall into game theoretics without realizing that you're doing it. Government contractors can actually be in a situation, or are actually in a situation, that they're financially incentivized in some places not to listen to their network sysadmins and not actually to really deal with the problem, perhaps the way with the drastic changes that need to be made.
The arms industry is estimated anywhere between $350 billion to $500 billion a year. One of the largest industries in the world, and these are all the guys, the military advisors, the generals who come here to buy weapon systems.
We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
Government contractors can actually be in a situation, or are actually in a situation, that they're financially incentivized in some places not to listen to their network sysadmins and not actually to really deal with the problem, perhaps the way with the drastic changes that need to be made.
I'm a firefighter.
A teacher.
I'm a farmer.
A manager.
I'm a barber.
A waitress.
A student. A mom.
A concerned citizen.
We're all part of your community.
Every day brings surprises.
A flat tire.
Midday traffic.
Out-of-control Jewish neocons.
There's always something unexpected.
And honestly, that's fine.
It's when you experience a moment of uncertainty.
Something you know shouldn't be there.
Or someone's behavior that doesn't seem quite right.
These are the moments to take a pause.
Because if something doesn't feel right, it's probably not.
It's not about paranoia.
Or being afraid.
It's about standing up and protecting our communities.
One detail at a time.
Because a lot of little details can become a pattern.
We
We
trust our instincts.
just like you should.
Because only you know what's not supposed to be in your everyday.
We all play a role in keeping our community safe.
So protect your everyday.
If you see something suspicious, say something to local authorities.
Hello. It is the 29th of July. It's 10:09 p.m., which means in Washington, D.C. it's around 9. So, let us now ring and hopefully it's going to work. Let's see. You can do this too. Are you going to do it? Come on now.
Department of Homeland Security, main switchboard operator 1. How can I direct your call?
Hello, my name is Brendon O Connell. I'm an Australian citizen calling from Malaysia. I'm not sure where to be directed to. It was regarding security breaches within the US high technology sector. I'm not really sure who to speak to.
Okay, so you're calling for to leave a tip or information, or? Okay. All right, hold on. I'm going to transfer you to the tip line. One moment, please.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You have reached the Homeland Security Investigations tip line. If you have a life or death emergency, please hang up and dial 911. National Security, press 4. To report.
Let's report these Zionist terrorists. Let's go. Let's rock. Yes.
Security Investigations tip line.
G'day, my name
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can. What would you like to report?
My name is Brendon O Connell. I'm an Australian citizen. I'm calling from Malaysia. I've had previous interactions with the Australian government, including the head of counter-terrorism in Western Australia, Inspector Barry Shelton. It's regarding Israeli spying and passing on US high technology to Russia.
Well, you can do it online and send it to us, and then we can send it to the right people. I mean, it could go to an attaché. It could go, to headquarters, in Washington. If you just go, it sounds like you have a lot of information. If you go to www.ice.gov, ice.gov, above that,
report crimes. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, it's kind of hidden up there. So see the email. So if you click on email, you can submit it. I mean, you could tell me over the phone, but it sounds pretty complicated. I mean, I don't know how I'll do it.
Well, I think for the record, just for you, this issue has been around for some time. Phil Giraldi used to have lunch with a friend of mine. Phil Giraldi was the former counterintelligence officer attached to the Turkish embassy. And Phil Giraldi's on C-SPAN. He's quite well known.
One other very good reason why Israel should not receive billions of dollars in military assistance annually is its persistent espionage against the United States. The existence of a large-scale Israeli spying effort at the time of 9/11 has been widely reported, incorporating Israeli companies in New Jersey and Florida, as well as hundreds of art students nationwide. 5 Israelis from one of the companies were observed celebrating against the backdrop of the Twin Towers going down. Israel, where government and business work hand in hand, has obtained significant advantage by systematically stealing American technology with both military and civilian applications. The U.S. developed technology is then reverse engineered and used by the Israelis to support their own exports. Sometimes when the technology is military in nature and winds up in the hands of an adversary, the consequences. Israel has sold advanced weapon systems to China that are believed to incorporate technology developed by American companies, including the Python 3 air-to-air missile and the Delilah cruise missile. There is evidence that Israel has also stolen Patriot missile avionics to incorporate into its own Arrow system, and that it used U.S. technology obtained in its Lavi fighter development program, which was funded by U.S. taxpayers, to help the Chinese develop their own J-10. The reality of Israeli spying is indisputable. I might cite the names of Jonathan Pollard, Ben Ami Kaddish, Stuart Nozet, and Larry Franklin as spies for Israel have been caught, but they are only the tip of the iceberg. Israel always features prominently in the annual FBI report called Foreign Economic Collection and Economic and Industrial Collection. The 2005 report states, Israel has an active program to gather proprietary information within the United States. These collection activities are primarily directed at obtaining information on military systems and advanced computing applications that can be used in Israel's sizable armaments industry. It adds that Israel recruits spies, uses electronic methods, and carries out computer intrusion to gain the information. A 1996 Defense Investigative Service report noted that Israel has great success stealing technology by exploiting the numerous co-production projects that it has with the Pentagon. It says, placing Israeli nationals in key industries is a technique utilized with great success. A General Accounting Office examination of espionage directed against American defense and security industries described how Israeli citizens residing in the U.S. had stolen sensitive technology to manufacture artillery gun tubes, obtained classified plans for reconnaissance systems, and passed sensitive aerospace designs to unauthorized users.
Assure me, many of the technicians, particularly the electrical engineering and really PhDs in all sorts of areas and engineers are actually Russians, many of whom are not even Jewish. They don't even identify as Jewish at all. But the last 20 years, the Israeli government has been encouraging them to come in, and they are basically running the Israeli high technology sector. Now, I don't know if you're aware, but the most advanced CPU fabrication factory in the world, Intel, is actually in Israel, in Eragot, Israel. And this basically, Russians have the full run of the place, considering that Russia is on selling all sorts of stuff to places like, even though it's quite public, how actual government departments, how woefully underinformed they are about the close relationship between Russia and Israel over the last 20 years. And that literally you've just dumped the F-35, one of the most advanced multi-role aircraft, into Israel's arms, and now the technicians running over that in places like Elbit Systems, which are modifying the helmet for the F-35, they're modifying the screens for the F-35, its multifunction displays, are actually populated by Russian technicians. And they brag that most of them don't learn Hebrew, don't identify as Jewish, and they're literally running backwards and forwards from Israel to Russia. And the One Belt, One Road agreement that's been agreed to between... Oh, I've been cut off.
First of all, Mr. Lee, how should we understand this innovative, comprehensive partnership? That seems to be the word being used. How should we interpret this? What does that mean, China's relation with Israel?
I think this and innovative, comprehensive partnership is exactly represented the Chinese relations with Israel. As Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, said, and again that the Israel is the innovation center of the world, and China is the marketing, and also has a huge, production capabilities. If China's this kind of production capabilities, and also the marketing capability, and combined with the innovation, which really has the advantage.
Right.
That would make both, the economic very, complementary.
That is in Tel Aviv. Now we are joined by Lionel Friedfeld, who is the CEO of Israel Asian Fund and also co-author of the book Israel and China from Silk Road to Innovation Highway. So this couldn't be more appropriate question to address to you, Mr. Friedfeld. What about the demand from both sides for one another in terms of technology export and also investment?
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much. First of all, it is a historical, meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu. We have to understand that there was past, visit of former President Shimon Peres, also Ehud Olmert, that actually had some family coming from Harbin in China. So the relationship between Israel and China is really close. It's around $12 billion of trade, and Israel is one of the largest partners in China. Regarding, in front of the United States and European Union. So it's very important on the trade side.
Lower the barrier for your technology export, even though you have an ally called the United States. China. And Israel, on the other hand, is asking China, saying, well, you know what? Please do not limit the capital investment in the technology in Israel, for example, coming from China. And only that would make the technological advancement further progress. So what about demands from both sides?
Yes, you're completely right. There is two angles to the Israel-China relationship. The innovation angle, today China needs innovation to catch up with their competitors, American competitors, Japanese, South Korean competitors. And today the name of the game, the battlefield in between China and the US, reaching to Israel innovation, because Israel is very strong in innovation, a lot of R&D centers. So the battlefield today is named Israel.
One other very good reason why Israel should not receive billions of dollars in military assistance annually is its persistent espionage against the United States. The 2005 report states, Israel has an active program to gather proprietary information within the United States. These collection activities are primarily directed at obtaining information on military systems and advanced computing applications that can be used in Israel's sizable armaments industry. It adds that Israel recruits spies, uses electronic methods, and carries out computer intrusion to gain the information.
So the relationship between Israel and China is really close. It's around $12 billion of trade, and Israel is one of the largest partners in China regarding, in front of the United States and European Union. So it's very important on the trade side.
What is the Intel Management System and why should you care? What is the ARC processor, jointly developed by Goldman Sachs and others for the Internet of Things? The combination of these technologies results in the crown jewel of the hardware facet of the worldwide Talmudic Telpiot takeover program, or TOP for short. This Talmudic technological takeover is part hardware and software, but also people, placing them in key positions around the world. It's a fully integrated combination flesh and blood backdoor, or FAB, into the world's high-tech infrastructure, which includes the emerging Smart Cities program combined with the Internet of Things and artificial intelligence. But the crown jewel of the Telpiot program is the ARC processor that sits within the Intel Management System, a CPU sitting physically within the Intel CPU with its own fully functioning Linux-based operating system, completely transparent to the Windows, Apple or Linux-based operating system functioning at the user level. This is the ultimate backdoor of backdoors, and it was designed and fabricated in Israel as the basis of the new Core series of Intel CPUs, integrated between 2006 and 2008. These are the same CPUs that all server farms all over the world use. Every Google server farm, Facebook, corporate, public and private. The NSA insisted on a patch that could switch off the Intel Management System for sensitive systems. No such luck for us mere mortal. The Intel Management Engine cannot be switched off and is a wide open hardware backdoor for Israel to get into any and all computer systems around the world. If you think the AMD line of CPUs are a safe option, think again. They have the platform security processor and it has the exact same problems. Besides, AMD, once a joint operation between Texas Instruments and the Chinese government, is now virtually wholly owned and controlled by China. The ARC processor is tiny and its multiple formats. It is filling the Internet of Things, from light bulbs to self-driving cars to robots, you name it. Think about it. Think about the power this gives the Israeli state and this Talmudic technological takeover.
The company Intel is now opening its biggest plants outside of the United States, and this one is going to be in Israel. The plant is set to produce the world's most advanced computer microprocessor. We all seem to have these in our computers, and it is going to have a huge, huge impact on Israel's economy. Our Mike Tobin is live at the new Intel plant in Kiryat Gat, Israel. I hope I said that correctly. Mike, so what is so great about this new microprocessor that they're making in this facility?
You see this cross-fertilization of great minds that are producing new conceptual products that are indeed changing the world for the better.
They don't want to tell us that the other thing besides cameras that they can put on it is rockets, and that's the main thing that people are buying it for, but you'll never hear an Israeli official admit that. There are like 24 drones in here. I think this is what the future is going to feel like when Skynet takes over and they become self-aware.
We designed them to be trusted with our homes, with our way of life, with our world. But did we design them to be trusted?
The rollout of USR's new generation of robot, the NS-5, was marred by the death of designer Alfred Lanning.
Identify. Murder's a new trick for a robot. Respond.
He don't murder him!
We're gonna miss the good old days.
What good old days?
When people were killed by other people.
My robots don't kill people.
That thing threw somebody out of a window. Is that registering with you?
A robot cannot harm a human being.
You trust them if you want to.
We look to robots for protection. Imagine the loss of all that we've gained because of an irrational paranoia.
Does thinking you're the last sane man on the face of the earth make you crazy? Because if it does, maybe I am.
Maybe you can be looking in the shadows all the time.
You're on the inside. Help me find out what is wrong with these robots.
Dr. Lanning suggested robots might naturally evolve.
I was hoping to see you again, Detective. Think of me as your friend.
Why didn't you just hand the world over on a silver platter?
Maybe we did.
We are on the eve of the largest robotic distribution in history. There will be one robot to every 5 humans.
How many robots have ever committed a crime? How many robots in the world? None.
There is no conspiracy. What this is one mistake.
Oh, hell no. Somehow, I told you so just doesn't quite say it. Get off my car!
I see you remain suspicious of me, Detective.
You know what they say about old dogs?
Not really.
Gotcha.
Journalist Michael Hastings died in a fiery car crash in Los Angeles this morning.
Now, some are asking if there is more to his death than meets the eye.
Police say he was going more than 100 miles an hour.
Okay, what we see is a car going across the screen, 3 explosions at the very end.
Good afternoon. Right, so we've been hearing a lot today about the importance of improving computer security. As Dan just alluded to, though, it's not just traditional computers that we need to worry about. There are many other kinds of systems as well. The slide that's been omitted showed a result of the researchers at UCSD and the University of Washington hacking into the dashboard display of a typical American sedan, making it show that the car was going 140 miles an hour while in park. Drilling down a little bit, modern vehicles consist of between 30 and 100 embedded control units, which are essentially small computers connected via a CAN bus. These cars are required by law to have a diagnostic port, typically located under the steering wheel, that allows mechanics to download diagnostic information and to perform software updates. In a first paper, the researchers from UCSD and the University of Washington showed that if they could touch the CAN bus through that diagnostic port, they could take over all of the functionality of the car that's controlled by software. And in a modern automobile, that's pretty much everything. These attacks involved infecting the computers in the repair shop and then having that infection spread to the car through the diagnostic port, or hacking in through the Bluetooth system, or using the cell phone network to break in through the telematics unit that's normally used to provide roadside assistance. The most ingenious attack, though, used the stereo system in the car. The researchers were able to craft an electronic version of a song that played just fine in your home stereo system or on your personal computer. But when you put that on a CD and played it in the car CD player, it took over total control of your automobile. Yeah, right, pretty scary, huh?
Speaking of technological brilliance, get ready because Israel's Mobileye technology company is just months away from putting the first autonomous cars on the roads. And it may just be part of the first collaborative team to cross first over the finish line in the worldwide race to create the first real driverless car. The Jerusalem-based company is holding the most complex automated drive ever to be publicly demonstrated on an urban highway in Las Vegas this week, with its British partner Delphi Automotive. But even more impressively, Mobileye has partnered with BMW and Intel to introduce the first fleet of 40 autonomous cars by the end of 2017. Global trials of the series, called the BMW 7, will take place in the United States and Europe. Mobileye is supplying its advanced high-performance computer vision processors to the endeavor. The Israeli tech firm is also using its reinforcement learning algorithms to design additional sensors and driving policies to provide models with artificial intelligence that's necessary to navigate complex driving situations.
Trevor Rees-Jones's lawyers wanted the inquiry to consider whether the Ritz and the firm that owned the Mercedes Etoile limousine might have been negligent. The Mercedes Diana used had been stolen 3 months earlier and its electronics ripped out. Had the repairs been properly carried out?
You see this cross-fertilization of great minds that are producing new conceptual products that are indeed changing the world for the better.
Robots attacked my car.
What robots?
Look in the tunnel.
When I just came from that tunnel, then what robots are you talking about?
The goddamn robots, John! You know, somehow, I told you so just doesn't quite say it.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your full name. Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. That I take this obligation freely, without mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office of which I am about to enter. So help me God. Congratulations, Second Lieutenant of Charlie Company.
You know, somehow, I told you so just doesn't quite say it.